so for the sketch, that is our first step. You guys all have your pencil. Remember, the tip is to use a light touch, and we are going to sketch in the composition. Okay, oftentimes we sketch in our sketchbook. This time we're going to sketch directly on here. So while looking at this, one of the first things to identify is where the horizon line is at. The horizon line is where the sky meets the ground. So this spot right here, we're going to do a dot. And we're going to do all of this together with the sketch. So go ahead and add that in. This is the dead center right here. So if you were to draw a line down to the corner diagonally, like this, that's about halfway down. Okay, so that dot right there, that's right here. Now we're going to sketch in the horizon line that's gonna go back, down, and up. I'm gonna do mine a little darker so that you guys can see it, but please do yours with a light touch. Okay. Then I'm gonna do the front part of the trees here, which is gonna kind of come like this. Okay. Then I'm gonna do the road, which curves around like that. And the top side goes right to that dot. It's off the bottom. Okay. Next, we're gonna sketch in this first layer of trees here. So that's this first layer right there. And I'm gonna make mine darker so that you guys can see it. Then, second layer of trees. Now from this side, we want to sketch the bottom of where those branches are at. So we have this line right now, okay, and we have the horizon line, but we want to get the tree line. The tree line is going to kind of go like this. So this is the tree line, goes underneath, and moves around like that. So that is the sketch, composition sketch. If you want to add a few more things into here with your pencil, you can. And those would be the large tree branches. Okay. I am only going to sketch in this first one, this big one here, because it goes all the way to the top. Starts down here, goes all the way off the top. And I'm gonna make this skinnier than the actual tree when I paint the tree. So I want to be able to cover up those lines later. It goes up all the way off the top. Sketching out too many of the other ones is not going to be very helpful, but getting this first one in and seeing like where it comes on the ground here, that's where it grows from, and it goes up all the way off the edge. All right. Next step. Everybody ready for that? Yes? Okay. So I am going to start painting now. And during each of these sections, I'm gonna pause the video and then, or stop the video and then restart for another section of it. So you guys can just click on each section by itself rather than having one big long video. So that you can just watch one section and paint it and then get your supplies ready for the next section and then paint that. Because there'll be multiple things you'll need to kind of prepare for. And I'm gonna get all of my paint set up now because I'm gonna paint all of them right now. I already have the gesso there. And I will have the phthalo blue. Oh, goodness. The ultramarine blue and the raw sienna on the back table, so that you guys can get little bits of all of those. They'll be the same process where they're in the cup. Yeah. Raw sienna is this guy right here. It says raw sienna. It's a pretty, like a yellow brown. We're just gonna use a little bit of that raw sienna. So I have my paint palette like this with all the paint there. I'm gonna try and mix sideways like this. My paint might start to fall, so I may have to kind of go like this instead and mix it this way. So the white background, that's kind of the first thing that I mentioned. That's step 2 is the white background. And that's what it says in the notes, right? Yes? Okay, so for the paint, we're using gesso and white. And it's equal amounts of both of those. You wanna mix these together with your palette knife. Okay. Right now, it's pretty stiff, right? It's not gonna fall down. However, I want it to be wetter than that. So I'm just gonna pick up some water with my palette knife. And I am using our new palette knife to mix this, because I'm gonna be using our new palette knife to apply it. So brushes, we're not gonna use a brush for this. We're using our knife palette knife, and that's what it's called, knife palette knife. So I have mixed this here, and now you see it's starting to drip. You see that piece right there is starting to fall down. All right, so where we're gonna put this is pretty thick, and it doesn't have to be thoroughly mixed. It's okay if if it looks kind of like cottage cheese. So I'm gonna scoop that up, and I'm gonna apply it in this background here. So that background space, okay? And it's pretty thick. I'm taking all of this here. Okay. Then I'm gonna apply it down here by the road. Okay. If you're gonna be painting the road later, then only like use this for the top portion and then paint it and then do the same thing in the bottom. I'm gonna paint it all at once because I'm gonna demo it all at once for you, but you'll do the sky first, keep some of this, and then you'll put this down later when you're ready to paint that portion. Okay, if you feel like you can do it all at once, then just go for it. We don't want this to dry out because a big part of our technique we're gonna be using today is painting while it's wet. And it's gonna kind of blend together and mix together a little bit, and we want it to stay wet like that. The rag here that we now have, okay, is used to clean, and we'll also be using it sometimes. You put your finger in it like this, and we'll do some stuff with it like this as well, okay? If you have a harsh edge along the outside anywhere, now is the time that you would just kind of fluff that a little bit with a clean portion of your rag. All right. Next step. What does it say?
It says
Sky. So we're gonna be doing the sky in this area back here, okay? And it's gonna go back behind over here as well. So for the sky, we're gonna use our new big brush here. Okay. And I'm gonna grab some ultramarine. This ultramarine from the little bottle I got is pretty dry. You will not need to add water to the ultramarine that you guys have. You wanna load the brush, and you will not need to add water. And we're gonna start off on the side. And we're gonna be doing like little small X's that go side to side like this. Okay, so start on the corners first. And then work your way in. This is a pretty light touch here. And you see why the white of the paint is helpful? It mixes with the blue. We want some texture to be showing here. I'm gonna blend all of that down here. And this painting is very, very textural. Okay. Back here, there's even all sorts of really cool texture. It's very light, but it's very texturized. So when we use this, I'm not gonna do long, even strokes. I'm gonna do small, kind of like wild, jagged strokes. So if you start to see that it is getting smooth, change it so it has some texture. This area over here, I'm gonna darken up in a little bit. Same thing goes for that area right now. I have a lot of white on my brush, so I'm gonna continue coming down with the white. I'm gonna leave this bottom portion as is because I'll show that later. Okay, now with my brush, rather than putting it in water, I just wanna get as much off as I can here on the dry rag, because as I mentioned, we're not using much water. So a hint is clean your brush on the rag. I'm gonna grab a little bit more of that blue, load it on my brush. And if I still have some white on my brush, that's okay because it's gonna be mixed with the blue here. And I just wanna darken the corners here just a little bit. So the background here gets lighter as it comes down. All right. Any questions about the sky? If you'd like to use your small filbert brush or your small flat brush to get little small details here in the sky, you can. Keep in mind that some of this may end up being covered up later, and a lot of this in the corner will be, but it doesn't mean that you can't practice texture, and the texture will end up showing through and will add to the interest level of the art. Even if it ends up being covered up, there's still something like an echo of that texture, of that mark underneath. Okay. Next, anything else from the notes?
Right now I'm on brushes, so it's the 1 inch or the 3/4 inch.
Mm-hmm. Yep, 3/4 inch or the 1 inch.
Yeah.
Flat.
And then the locations is like on the
Yeah, the middle of the sky. Can you grab the door, please? I better put a little stick in there next time. Okay. Tips are to clean the brush on the rag. If you guys want to follow along with the notes and like see what she's writing and or add anything else extra to it, the link is on the announcements under our page in Canvas. Okay, you good?
Yep.
All right, next step.
Next up is the ground.
Ground, okay. So for the ground, okay. And this, what we're doing right now is called an underpainting because it's gonna go underneath a lot of what we're gonna be doing later. So the first thing we're gonna start with is this little corner right here, okay? And I have a little bit of white in that space, but mostly it's just open like this, okay? So it's this area, it goes from dark to light. So I need to mix some of those colors, and we're doing that down on the bottom with these. So the placement of this, you can see the ultramarine blue is on the top because we use that for the top portion in the sky. Phthalo blue and raw sienna is what we're using in the bottom. That's why it's in the bottom of our canvas, or the bottom of our palette. So the placement on the palette is gonna help you know what paints to put where. That's why you'll start with the day in getting the paint out in the correct locations. So, going to mix. Let's see if I can mix like this so you guys can see. So we have a really dark green over here. And we have a lighter green that's going to happen by mixing the raw sienna. And then some of that extra I'm going to mix in over here. And if it's dried off too much and you don't have enough to mix with it, dip your palette knife in some water, because this dry white paint will rehydrate with a little bit of water. So I just dipped it in some water. I can now scrape it all away. So I've got my 3 values: dark, medium, light. Okay. Now these brush strokes are pretty small. And we're going to be using our filbert brush for that. Okay. Not our tiny filbert, but the medium filbert. Okay. I have a long-handled one, but the filbert are the ones that are rounded like this. Okay, so it's the larger of those two. I'm going to start in with a dark color first. Okay. Paint that down here. Add some lighter. and dab it off on the rag. So that's the hint. Now I'm going to do the same thing over down here on this side. Start with a dark value first. Let your brush strokes show. Medium. And light. Again, I'm not using water. I want that curve of the road to show. Feel free to use smaller brushes if you want to use some smaller brushes. You can end up with some texture. Mix some of that white in at the top. Okay. So I've now moved to a flat brush. You can use any of the flat brushes you have, whether it's the the inch, 3/4 inch or 1/2 inch. And we're just gonna cut in some straight lines here. So these straight lines are the path. I want those to kind of exist where I have drawn in that path. And you'll be able to see a little bit of the mark. I had too much of the white right there. So I need to darken that up a little bit more. So now we have some of the basics. What we want to avoid is, let's see. Okay. Hold on. It's sometimes hard for me to talk and paint at the same time. All right, so the path has the straight lines and then everything else has like the fluffy textural lines. So our colors that we have so far don't match the colors here. That's okay, we'll get there. This is what's called an underpainting. Okay? If you have some extra of that medium green, you can use that to kind of fill in this space. I've got some on my brush there. I still have some left over here. Can you hold this for me for a second? You can get a little bit of texture in the side there. Okay. I just left my tree alone. Because again, it can give a mood. You don't have to do that little triangle there right now, but if you have some extra, you might as well just start to get some of that feeling and mood of the texture that we'll end up with at the end. And that's what we have. Okay. All right.